from 39 days at sea in a rowboat. They rowed a total of 2,800 miles through every weather condition known to man, and all for a great cause. Welcome to the show, Paris, Norriss and Harry Amos. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having us.
Tell us, what were you doing in a rowboat for 39 days? What exactly was the challenge?
Well, okay, so how did this all start? So it was COVID. We're all sat in lockdowns around the world. My brother in Sweden, I was here in Dubai, Paris was in Dubai, and Barney, the other member, was in London, and we were all just thinking, what on earth are we going to do next? I had a little bit of exposure to ocean rowing through friends of mine who'd rowed the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean, and it had been on the bucket list, and my brother finally managed to convince me to do it, and so that was the start point, really. We knew absolutely nothing about what we were getting ourselves in for.
We thought we had prepared because it took 2 years of preparation.
Yeah.
But as soon as we got on the water, I think we realised we didn't know what we were doing.
Really?
It's funny because we've got a video of our first dispute, which was after about 20 minutes. Trying to figure out which way was north.
North, yeah.
Right? You would have thought something like that would be something we could agree on, but we were like, no, the instruments say it's this way. I was like, no, it can't be that way, Harry. The land's this way. And we were
a bit disoriented because America doesn't run north and south. It actually runs sort of southeast to northwest. So in my mind, like north was that way, but actually north was into the land. And don't worry, we had a compass. And we figured out.
But even so, if your mind is telling you one thing and this device is telling you another, which do you go with?
Well, no, that's a good point actually, because you often do question yourself. You know, you have this sort of image in your mind. You're confident in what you're doing, but the gear doesn't line up. Now, as it turned out, we found out after about 3 days that some of our steering equipment wasn't calibrated, and it was out annoyingly by only about 20 degrees, but 20 degrees is enough to make you sort of think, is it right, or am I wrong, or is that wrong, or whatever? And then we had this horrible 24-hour period where we were rowing, desperately trying to get west, but in order to get west, we were sort of rowing into the weather, and we doggedly rowed through the night, a horrible side-on wind and waves, and then the next morning, we sort of turned on the tracker where we could see where some of the other boats were, and we'd pushed annoyingly far north, and it was at that point there we realized that we'd definitely been rowing on the wrong bearing, after which we then calibrated it, which then brought us on, and then from then on we were sort of fine. But it was probably about 30 nautical miles.
Everyone thought we were going to Alaska.
Yeah.
We were like, it's pretty cold.
Yeah.
And the other thing is we hadn't figured out in all of our training that the compass is actually set the other way. So you're looking at it, but you're actually 180 degrees off. So we were completely confused. And these are things, I mean, we look back and laugh now because we should have figured it out. But we figured it out pretty quick and we got back on track.
But you mentioned, I'm imagining a boat in the middle of the Pacific, like totally wilderness, nothing around you. Yeah. You mentioned other boats. Is this part of a race? Yeah. And did you have protection? Like if something went wrong,
so no
who
protection.
Could you call?
No protection. There is a sort of operations room, if you like, people we can ring if things go really badly wrong. But after about 3 days, you're out of the sort of range of the Coast Guard, and if anything goes wrong, then you're relying on other ships that could maybe pick you up. And the phone we have to ring that ops room would help just relay the information to a ship. And ideally, that ship would be a cruise liner, but in reality,
ideally,
it's going to be a cargo ship. Yeah. Although actually, probably after a week, we even stopped seeing the cargo ships.
Yeah, I remember it was a good period in the middle there where we hadn't seen a cargo ship for 3 weeks, nothing, no boats whatsoever, and we celebrated our halfway point. And I was like, guys, you do realize that means we're the furthest away from help we're ever going to be. And because we were
1,100 nautical miles, 1,400 miles away from anything.
Yeah, so we were, I mean, in terms of being deserted, there's no sparser space in the world than the Pacific Ocean. It's where they have Point Nemo, which is the most sort of derelict place in the world. It's the furthest away from any land or any shipping lanes.
At Point Nemo, you're closer to the International Space Station, which is 420 kilometers above you.
Wow!
Than you are the nearest shipping lane. let alone land.
Yeah.
So the nearest shipping lane is 500 miles away.
Okay, so Point
so
Nemo.
Astronauts are closer to you than ships.
It's game over. And you mentioned weather. Like, can you describe to us maybe the worst weather condition that you face? Like, what is it actually like being, in this tiny little boat and just you guys against the elements? What's your mind going through at that time?
Well, so the short answer is you get on there and all the waves seem big. So every wave that hits you, wow, that's a huge one. And then the weather hits you and, oh my God, these are the biggest waves ever. And then it just gets worse and worse. And by the end, when you've seen the biggest possible wave, which is around 40 foot with breakers on top of it, your fear of the waves eventually sort of dissipates. But yeah, that about 40 foot with breakers on top.
40-foot waves.
Yeah.
How big is the boat?
It's 7.5 meters long, and when we set off, the safety officer Ian Couch said to us, prepare yourself for the first 48 hours of your life. And it was certainly the worst 48 hours.
Well, for you it was particularly bad.
For me, it was particularly bad
Why?
because I got seasick after about 24 hours.
Can I paint the picture here? So I was just coming on at about 4 o'clock in the morning. So they'd just been rowing for their 2-hour shift. My brother and I were coming on for the 2-hour shift. So I literally just put my gear on, opened the door, I turned my head torch on, I caught Paris's eyes, and then just watched him flop to the side of the boat and try and get his head over the side so that he could.
Because my feet are strapped in for the rowing.
So he's desperately trying to be sick over this, and he's obviously pukes everywhere. And probably one of the most important things about rowing in ocean, bearing in mind you're rowing for up to 14 hours a day, burning up to 8,000 calories a day, is how much food you eat. And Paris didn't eat a morsel for the first 3-4 days.
So there I am. We at that point in time, we were rowing 14 hours a day. So I kept on shift, but I'm burning maybe 6,000-7,000 calories and not taking any in. It was hell. It was absolute hell. And the thing is the one thing that we didn't really factor in before we went to California was how seriously cold it was. Like the water was 10 degrees centigrade.
Whatever they tell you about California, it's a lie. It's not warm and sunny, full of surfers, whatever. No. It was 10 degrees, gloomy skies, rain, crosswind. It was,
we had that for 10 days, right? And so we hit 2 storms. And the thing about storms is, if they hit land, they get given a name and everyone knows about them. We hit one that was coming into Hawaii called Storm Calvin, which everybody was very freaked out about because we were in that storm. The one that we hit leaving California and when we were out to sea, never hit land. Nobody knew about it.
Probably worse. Yeah.
Nobody heard about it. The only people that were worried about it were 4 guys in a rowing boat hanging on for their lives in this freezing cold water. Because the difference was, if we had capsized at that point in time, the water was 10 degrees. We would have got hypothermia within half an hour, and we would have died of it in 4 to 5 hours. So our margin for error was really, really thin. When we were coming into Hawaii, if we capsized the boat, we would have done some backstroke to land. We really quite enjoyed it. It was beautiful. But what happened when we hit Storm Calvin, everybody on land was very scared for us because our friends and family had come to Hawaii.
And the news was going mad.
And they're like, what about these guys in the ocean? We had a moment of a particularly difficult scare in the middle of the night when it hit. And
can I tell you this bit? Because my brother and I were on. The day before, we'd all sat down on the boat, and we knew the storm was going to hit us. So we had sort of thought about what we were going to do, and like clockwork, it hit us in the middle of the night. The waves were behind us, the wind was behind us. So the fear actually was that we were going too fast and we would be pushed side on to the weather. And when you're side on to the weather, the waves crash over and you run the risk of capsizing. So it hit us. We were pushed onto the side as we thought might happen. We managed to get it straight for a moment and then back on the side again. And the plan had been to throw out the drogues. And the drogues are like throwing out the brakes. So we throw out a drogue. It sort of worked, but not fully. So we threw out the second drogue, which brought us in line. But then the bigger drogue then ripped on the force of the waves. And then the drogues got completely tangled around the rudder, which meant we lost steering, and then we're stuck backside on again. Ollie and I are desperately trying to fight the situation. We thought we need some help, so I actually went to the bow where Paris slept, opened the door, said, "Paris, get the GoPro. we need you out here."
they said,
Priorities.
Get the GoPro.
I was asleep, and we only get like an hour and a half sleep in between sessions. So when I get this wake up call, it's like, we need you on deck now. And I was like, okay. And door closes, and after about 10 seconds, the boat just went almost upside down, and I was like,
oh, this is serious.
I'm not allowed to swear, but there's a lot of swearing going on, and I was like, I've got to get out there now, right? So I just like got ready. Usually I've got like at least 5-10 minutes to get ready. I had to get out there, and none of us knew how to correct this situation.
Yeah,
some really stupid suggestions.
So we're stuck side on, and Ollie's going, don't worry, I've got an idea. I'll just jump in the water. And I'll untangle the. It's in the middle of the night, and the waves are massive. Yeah, and there was a moment where we were like, "Yeah, okay, you can do." And then we're like, "No, actually, this is a really bad." Obviously, he would have been tied on, but this is a really bad idea. The last sort of safe thing you can do is to throw out your parachute anchor, which is like a giant parachute, and you throw it off the bow. And the idea is that then it puts the nose of the boat into the weather, which then means the weather and waves crash over you, and you have a sort of respite from. So we threw it out, and lo and behold, we were then nose on. In the process, Ollie, whilst trying to row, pulled his shoulder out properly. Luckily, it popped back in, and then when we were trying to fix the drogues after that, which was still in a tangled mess around the rudder, Ollie then almost fell overboard. So his his legs came up.
Poor guy.
And I was busy pulling in the drogues, and Ollie got really angry with me after. He says, "You didn't even notice that I fell overboard." And I was like, "Well, you didn't fall overboard, so I didn't want to make an issue out of it because I almost died." Anyway, we were fine, and then
the point you missed out here is that in order to get the drogues out, I had to hold him by his ankles over the edge of the boat, and he was just hanging off the edge, fishing out the lines in the middle of the night with these 40-foot waves knocking us sideways.
Our head torches.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see it on Netflix. To be honest,
annoyingly, you have got footage. Annoyingly, it just doesn't come out very well because it's the middle of the night. But you'll get the idea.
We've got the commotion.
We have to ask. Less people have done this than have gone into space or climbed Everest. So when you started the journey, why? Like, what motivated you to actually see this whole thing through?
Well, I think we've all got varying motivations for different reasons. I realized as I was doing this that this was like my life dream as a kid. I used to fantasize about being on a raft, going across the ocean to some desert island and surviving. I've always just liked this idea of just trying to see how I can survive. So that's been pretty much my life. I have a TV show all about adventure and go and do these things. We all, I think, had a deeper motivation that had spurred us to take action on these things. Harry can mention his. I had someone close to me die who hadn't lived their life to the fullest, and I was like, "That's it. No more thinking about it. Let's get doing all the things. All the guys that I thought were heroes for what they did. I want to go and do all those things." And so that was my thing. But you?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few. I was always. My brother and I grew up on the water. As life turns out, we were split, from the age of 18 onwards, but we always had this desire to do a massive adventure together. So that was the first thing. But in terms of ocean rowing specifically, I was a soldier for 11 years. One of my soldiers and now great friends was very badly injured. He was double amputee in an IED strike. He went into a coma. He was in a coma for almost 40 days. Woke up, life changed forever, as you can imagine. And a really good friend of mine, a guy called James Kyle, who'd rowed the Indian Ocean, went to hospital to go meet this guy called Kale Royce, MBE, for Services to Veterans, and said, "Don't worry, Royce, we're going to do a big adventure." And Royce, a year to the day after being hit by this IED strike, rowed the Atlantic with James Kyle as part of a half amputee crew, 2 amputee guys, 2 fully abled. And then, because he's a complete lunatic, he then did it again a year after that as part of an all amputee crew. So Royce, for me, was a massive inspiration. And I went to this event after his row with my brother, and that was what planted the seed with Ollie. And so, it was like a 10-year mission, which we'd been procrastinating, and finally COVID got us across the line to start actually organising it. But that's the inspiration for me.
That's some strong motivation there. And in case anyone is watching and they're inspired by your story, what's the preparation like? Like, could I decide, okay, this is what I want to do? Is there a lot of money involved? Mentally, physically, what type of preparation do you need to take this challenge?
Well, there's lots of things. The first question I had when we started this out was, how on earth are we going to pay for it? It is expensive. You know, these are bespoke boats. There are only 100 or so in the world. So we rang up the boat maker and got our first understanding of how much this is going to cost. All in, plus the charity money we wanted to raise, we're talking around £300,000. And so, the first thing we did was go to sponsors, and we were very lucky with our local network here in Legatum, which is an amazing philanthropic fund. There you go, there. We're the first
strong
people,
logo, Legatum.
and we aligned with some of their mission and values, and so they were the people that got us going. And then another amazing company, GSB Capital, which is a private wealth fund, focused on ESG here in Dubai. They were the second big supporter we got. And then after there, it was a sort of trickle of smaller tickets, but that is probably the most stressful part of planning and preparation.
That was like 2 years of raising money. I mean, so the biggest factor about being able to cross the ocean is money, right? So if people say it's about fitness or resilience, you're not even going to be able to test that if you haven't got the money. I've realized that I think probably if people said, look, I'm thinking about rowing an ocean, I'd probably tell them, don't do it.
Go and climb a mountain.
Yeah, do something else.
There you go, guys. You've heard it here first.
I'm serious because I do a lot of different adventures. I skydive. I believe anyone can skydive. Paramotor. So is Harry. Harry actually, his company taught me. I believe anyone can do it. Scuba diving, anyone can do it. Not anyone can row an ocean. That's for sure. You need a particular type of mentality to be able to deal with that. And if you don't have it and you find yourself in the middle of the ocean and you now realize that you're not right for this, it's going to be hell. Yeah. And it's also going to probably be fatal. So it's not something I promote to people and say, look, we're the ocean rowers. You got to get out there. It's like, no, I'm not pushing anyone to do it.
Don't do it lightly. I mean, it's a wonderful thing because when you're faced with that level of endurance and it strips away everything. You're exhausted, tired, very exposed, often afraid, and probably uniquely to rowing, but many endurance sports are the same. You're stripped down to nothing, and so you have to be. You can only be yourself, and there's no hiding from the people around you and yourself, and you have to rely on the team uniquely. And then you have this wonderful moment where when you get over sort of that initial, God, I'm trapped on a boat, where you feel wonderfully free on the ocean as well, because you're sort of free of the shackles of your mind and your perceived limits. And then, dare I say, there is some enjoyment that starts coming in eventually.
When you see Hawaii.
We definitely had a great time. I mean, it's interesting because
definitely highs and lows. Yeah.
I haven't seen Harry since we left Hawaii, and I've been in Hawaii until like a few days ago. I'm still pretending on social media that I'm in Hawaii, so I think
he was supposed to come back a long time ago. But he
went to find the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, I think I've blown the cover with the Lovin Dubai show. But it's interesting because I've got my version of the story, and I haven't yet heard Harry's version of the story or the other guys.
True, yeah.
I've just been slagging him off for the last 3 months. Yeah,
but I remember it just being. I just had a great, except for those first 3 days where I was, sick as a dog. I really enjoyed it, and it brought out a different version of us because we've known each other a long time before, So obviously Harry and Ollie were brothers; they've known each other their whole lives. Ollie was at school with me since I was 15. Barney was at school with Ollie since they were 8. So we've all known each other a long time, but we were different people on that boat, and we were different people when we got off it afterwards. But after day 1. All of the ego, all of the bravado that we had heaps among us, because we all got this kind of boarding school, rough and tumble, It shattered to zero when we realized the seriousness of the situation we're in. And we just evolved into this very supportive team. And I believe it brought out the best of us. I mean, I've watched the footage on there and I miss it. what we were doing, and just the jokes we were having all the time, and just constant banter.
Your cheerfulness is a superpower.
Yeah,
and actually taking the piss out of each other is a remarkably effective way of elevating your morale. And can I tell a story about James Blunt? We're again. It was a hot day. I was off shift. Barney was rowing. Barney was Paris's partner, and Paris had come on shift in really jolly mood, chatty and what have you. And then we're listening to music as we always do. And then so this James, it was "Goodbye, My Lover" comes on, and Paris just breaks down. I don't want to speak out of turn, but
it's fine.
We were shocked. We were going, "Oh my God, what's wrong with him?" Well, he's finally snapped.
well, this is it. Is because I think initially Ollie had hit an emotional point, and he was really missing his wife. And then I had a chat with Harry, and he said, "Look, this is the first time I've been away on an expedition where I've actually had a wife and 2 kids, because he's been off doing these things his whole life, but never with a wife and kids." And so he had a bit of a moment, and I was the only one on the boat that is not married, don't have kids, and I generally have a bit of bravado and totally fine. So they've never seen me in any sort of emotional situation.
No. And you're such a jolly guy.
Yeah. And I just broke down, and it was about halfway through the race. Right?
It was almost exactly halfway. Yeah.
And I've now luckily I've had enough time to reflect on things. I spent a couple of months in Hawaii, and now I can look back and go, why did everything happen the way it did?
And by the way, we banned James Blunt after that.
No more James Blunt after that.
No more James Blunt.
He did his job.
And I realised, because at that point in time, it had really hit home to me that when you've been stripped of everything, we didn't have a bed, we didn't have a shower, we didn't have any of the basics, let alone the luxuries of life, that you start to really come to terms with what is important to you and how we take those things for granted. The things, because they're around us all the time. It's the people we love. It's the people that are there for us. It's the basic things that if you take them away, you now realize how important they are.
Yeah, no one misses their car.
Yeah.
No one misses all the things we have.
We were not eager to learn what's in the news. Like you just don't care about that stuff. You miss the people that have actually been there for you, and you start to realize who they are. And then I had come to a realization at that point. Maybe not consciously, but subconsciously, that I'd taken a lot of things for granted throughout my life, and I've lost them because I did, and that song triggered a.
Oh, you're going to go again now, aren't you?
Oh.
There's someone out there. There's someone out there that's been lost, guys, and that is you watching.
So I was. Do you know what? It's funny because men obviously get a lot of don't get much credit for sort of being emotionally, but we Barney and I were initially quite shocked, and we were like, "Wow, this is And then we spoke through it, and we then had a laugh, and then it was a very cathartic experience. You really sort of reset in many ways.
So beautiful, guys. That is all we have time for on the show this morning. But what an absolutely epic, resilient challenge that you put yourself through. So brave. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, that is all we have time for the Lovin Dubai show this morning. We're back with you tomorrow morning, same time, same place. Goodbye from me.